Good evening, one and all, and thank you very much for joining us here on the Game of Two Halves podcast, which is powered by the Geelong Region Soccer Show. My name is Tonchi Prusak, and it's an absolute pleasure to be with you here tonight. And it's going to be a massive, massive show, a huge show, one that we've really been looking forward to this for a while because apart from the fact that we've got a young fella who's, we've seen him around the traps. We've probably played against him. We've probably played with him. We've probably watched him play football here in Geelong. He is now on the other side of the world doing what he loves most, and that is playing football. We're going to talk to Benjamin Zilic about his rather illustrious footballing path thus far, but it's such a long way to go because he's just touched the tip of the surface, so to speak. He's a youngster that's just, doing really, really well with the Steve Gerrard Academy in Liverpool. So he's one of our guests tonight, and also joining us, and that's going to be in the first part of the program, the global game. In the second part, the local game segment, we catch up with recently appointed Corio Soccer Club coach Ante Didulitsa, whose side won their first game of the State League One season on the weekend, and they did it in emphatic fashion, defeating Whittlesea Rangers on their home turf 4-0. So that was a fantastic result for the Eagles, and we'll be talking to Ante a little bit later on in the program. Big shout out to our major sponsor this year, without whom we would just not be able to do, any of this kind of stuff that we are doing, and that is that's not the one, the Euro Football Stars. So a big thank you to Ray Wood from Euro Football Stars, and they are absolutely fantastic, and they have been absolutely fantastic, and we've caught up with the Ray over the last 3 weeks from such exotic locations as London, Barcelona and Madrid. And if you missed any of those segments, do go over to our YouTube channel, the Geelong Region Soccer Show channel, and you'll find all the stuff there that you need. Folks, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we return straight away, we are going to be going all the way to Britain, to the UK, and we're going to be talking to young Benji Zilic from the Steve Gerrard Academy. That is the global game segment coming up right after this very, very short break. Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves podcast, powered by the Geelong Region Soccer Show. And it is time now for the Global Game segment. And we saw some snippets there of the objective testing that Euro Football Star runs. And they have been running here in Geelong as well, just as recently as a few months ago. And we'll find out a little bit more about the effectiveness of some of those techniques and indeed what Euro Football Star has helped with our next guest. And it's an absolute pleasure to cross live over to Liverpool in the UK and talking to Benji Zilic. Benji, first of all, good morning to you and welcome to the Game of Two Halves podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Tunch.
Mate, well, first of all, we saw that little snippet there. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But, mate, you must be pretty chuffed and sometimes pinching yourself that you're on the other side of the world. The rest of your mates are here in Geelong going to school, or I mean, you go to school as well. But and they're playing, in grounds that you played up until a few years back. But, mate, it must sometimes feel quite surreal, does it?
Yeah, sometimes, wake up in the morning and you don't quite realize that you're actually in another country, but then you message your friends and family and different time zones, and then you realize, got to go to training, got to go see other people, got to go to college, and, it's taken me a few months to get used to it and understand that it is real.
Well, we'll have a good chat about that, and there is obviously a lot of the glamorous side of it, but there's also some of the difficulty and the toughness, particularly being away from family. And a big shout out to the Zilic family. I'm sure Rose and Josip and the kids are going to be tuning into this as well, and to the many friends down at North Geelong Warriors and cousins, etc. So I'm sure they'll be tuning in, folks. If you are tuning in, pop in the chat section a question you might want to ask Benji, and we'll try and get through so many of them. I've got a whole list of questions here from people wanting to ask questions. But Benji, let's take a step down memory, or let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's talk us about your soccer, how you first started playing it, how you fell in love with it, when you fell in love with it. So let's go right back to the early beginnings, and with a football family like the Ziliches, it's no surprise that you eventually would have got into soccer.
I think it started when I was about 4 or 5. I had Joey Dilica and Ante Stosic coach me since I was little. Didn't really enjoy the first year and a bit, so I took a little break, believe it or not, and then came back in under 7s to then play with the same group of boys and same coaches. Then from about under 7s to under 15s, pretty much stayed together. From under 13s to 15s, played NPL, and we're constantly in the top 3 fighting for the league title.
Mate, that's so you basically from under 7s all the way through to under 15s pretty much stayed the same as a group, and that's really an interesting point, because I know John Didlitzer in his who was former North Geelong Warriors president, in his role as Professional Football Association Chief Executive, commissioned a report about the culture of clubs, and the successful players are the ones that stay at the one club and continuously move through. How important do you think that was for, as you're starting to get out of mini roos and now you're starting to get into a bit more serious soccer, and then eventually ending up in junior boys NPL? How important was that sort of bonding and that camaraderie and pushing each other and staying together all that time?
I think it was probably the most important part of my footballing career so far, staying with everyone, seeing them basically every day, whether it's at school or training, having the same coaches that can understand you and push you even further. I feel like it's, the most important thing that's happened to me.
Yeah. When did you decide you really wanted to make a serious go of it? Not just take it seriously as a serious hobby, and maybe work your way one day up the senior ranks there at Alco Park, but when did you really decide you wanted this to be fair income, something that would eventually see you go to the other side of the world?
I think I was about 8 or 9. A former Liverpool player called Luis Suarez signed for Liverpool, and was an absolutely great player, and I wanted to be just like him. So when I saw him and started watching him live for Liverpool in the Premier League, I felt like I wanted to be just like him. So about 8 or 9, I started taking it seriously.
Who were the biggest influences on you during your time in Geelong?
Probably my coaches. Yeah, Joe Dilitzer used to be a former professional. So, he'd have that experience and he'd teach me, and I want to play. He's played Champions League. I want to play Champions League just like him.
Was he the only one? Were there other coaches, whether it be at school, whether it be in the rep squads, whether it be just family friends, for example? But who were some of the other notable influences on your path? Let's call it path. Let's not just talk about your soccer, but your actual pathway.
Josip Skorka would be another one, former Premier League footballer and played for Socceroos. He coached me for the Vic State team for a couple of years, also playing upper age group for him, like a couple of games during the season. So he was another influence.
Yeah. What about your dad? You got to mention your dad there, or did he try and stay, far removed? Because we know your dad Josip has been heavily involved in coaching and coaching education as well, and he continues to do so. And he's had quite a lot of influence, not just down at North Geelong. Vesco, don't take another shot now. Not just at North Geelong, but around the region. He's been involved with some of the other clubs, rep squads, and what you're not. How much of an influence was he in the coaching side of things?
Massive. Like, I probably didn't mention him because he didn't cross my mind, because it's just so
Obvious.
regular for me.
Yeah.
But I think part of it was he really wanted to watch me grow instead of coach me. He wanted to see how I would go with other coaches and how I'd get better with them instead of having him as a coach.
Yeah. And is it hard though when your father's heavily involved? At one stage, he was even the president there, but he's heavily involved in coaching, education, setting up SAP programs, for example. He did that a few years back as well. Is it hard when he's your father, but also at the same time he's a renowned coaching figure? So when he says something, obviously there's a bit of weight to what he has to say. Is it hard as a kid to sort of like listen to it or block it out and listen to some of the other coaches?
I find it quite easy.
Mm-hmm.
If my dad's my coach, I know that everything he says, and if he's going to go hard on me, I know it's like for the better for me.
What about you? Did it push you harder knowing that your dad was there in the corner?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, what about some of the other guys that you played with who growing up, who were the kids that really kind of pushed you and continue to push you? Maybe, they give you a bit of inspiration, when things aren't going so well, and then you remember something that happened, whether it be in the 12s or 13s or 14s. Who are some of the boys growing up that really kind of helped you, mold you?
One of them would be Noah Skorka, who now plays in Hajduk under-19s.
Yeah.
Just recently played a UEFA Youth League final. Grew up together, didn't really play in the same team since he obviously was better, played in higher age groups, and I think he pushed me as a young kid to try to get onto his level. Another player would be Zach Stosic, who's same age as me, and just a top footballer.
Yeah, Zach, definitely. Now, how old are you, by the way, Benji?
17 now.
17 years of age, yeah. All right, let's talk about now the pre-COVID period. So things are now starting to really get serious. You've decided that, this is something that you want to pursue, that, as you said, you want to play in the Champions League. You want to play in the UEFA Champions League. You want to play in Europe. You've made that decision. How did you come about making that decision? Who did you sort of consult with? And what did you then, what was the next step that you did after making kind of that decision, or, telling yourself, this is what I want?
I think it started in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my team went to a invitation-only soccer tournament in Sydney, held by Football Tech.
Yep.
And I won the top goal scorer for that, and I was approached by a Instagram account called Euro Football Star, run by Ray Wood, who now sponsors the show. And just got in contact with him and asked him about how Euro football start, like how to run, what do you have to do to get a spot to go overseas, what kind of training is it, and then just about a year, he told us that he was having a training camp in Gold Coast in the same year, and it was the same time as the Croatian soccer tournament. So we were going to that, obviously going to go watch, and then just as like a detour, I went to go do this training session, and then he told us like, "You've passed the objective testing. If you want to go, we can help you take you overseas to Liverpool."
And that was the start of your connection, I guess, your collaboration with Euro Football Star. We saw the objective testing there just before we crossed over to you. And there's many youngsters, both boys and girls in Geelong, have had an opportunity now to experience that objective testing. How much of an influence, how much of a support has Ray and the rest of the team at Euro Football Star been with pretty much from 2018 to here, and getting you to the Steve Gerrard Academy in Liverpool?
Yeah, I think the help's been good from 2019 up until just last year in September, October. They've helped me push forward and given me more opportunities. I was supposed to go from 2020 and 2021 back overseas,
Yep.
but because of COVID, it weren't able to happen. So as soon as the flights were available to come back in 2022, I got my flight and came back, gave us the opportunity to train with Steven Gerrard Academy, and the coaches and directors liked what they saw, and they kept in contact with us over 2022, like end of the year period, to then confirm details and how to get me over, what it's like to live here, stuff like that.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about getting over to the Steve Gerrard Academy. There's some footage of some of the games involving you there at in Liverpool. What's it like? What's it like being there, living there? How did it all start once you made the decision to move there? How did you fit in? Did you find accommodation? Did your parents come with you? Tell us all about that.
January, like mid-January,
Yep.
I came over with my sister and my dad, so they helped me settle in just a little bit into the International Players Hotel. So that hotel offers accommodation and meals for just about 30 footballers.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time...
So when you say international hotel, are they from all parts of the world, are they?
Yeah.
Really?
So you got about 8 to 10 Americans,
Yeah.
maybe 5 Canadians, a couple of Africans. You got, I think now, 4 Australians.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And where are the other guys? Where are the other 3?
All from Queensland.
All from Queensland. There you go. So we need a few more Geelong people there to keep you company.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But yeah, how was it once the family moved away back over here? What was it like then for those first few days, maybe first few weeks? Were you getting homesick? Were there at any stage that you felt like, oh, I just want to pack it in and go back to Geelong?
There was one period where I felt a little bit sick. I wasn't getting the best sort of sleep, and I just didn't feel healthy mentally.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept in contact with my parents, kept in contact with my friends, talking to people in the hotel, and it just made me feel like I was part of a family here.
Yeah. Did that have a bit of a detrimental effect on your football at the time, or were you able to sort of switch off and focus on your football when you had to, or was that still constantly playing on your mind until you kind of were able to sort of resolve it?
For me, it's easy when playing football. Everything in my mind just switches off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on how I'm performing. I'm focused on what I'm going to do next. just focus on at the moment.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. And is that something that you've trained yourself to think that way, to sort of just block everything out and just relax on the field, or is that something that just comes naturally to you without having to work too hard on it?
I think a bit of both. I think most footballers will say that if anything's going on, like back home or back with your friends, when you play football, you sort of forget about it. For 90 minutes, you're focused on your performance, you're focused on your team's performance, and if you make a mistake, how you can be better, or what's going well and how you can maintain that.
I talk to a lot of coaches. I coach myself at under 12 level, and one of the things I speak to a lot of coaches is we notice a lot of young players, they put a lot of pressure on themselves, and that always shows in their performance. They're very kind of rusty, if you like, initially when they start, and it takes them a long while to sort of relax. And once they relax, then they start to play some good football. What would be some tips, Benji, that you would be able to pass on to young players, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds in Geelong coming up through the ranks, how, to deal with that pre-match stress and pre-match nerves?
Well, what I do is before games, I'm always talking to my teammates, seeing how they feel, what's their predictions for the game. If they're ready to start, if they're ready to come on, what impact are they going to make? I don't like to focus on myself. I want to focus on my teammates and how to set them up to have a good game, and then focusing on myself just comes along.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any pre-match or pre-game rituals, or are you superstitious? Do you do you pack something in the bag just before you head off down towards the ground?
Yeah. When we get there to the pitch, it's always left foot first into any building,
Oh yeah.
and left foot first onto any pitch, and left foot first over any lines.
And are you a left footer?
No.
No, there you go. So it's like left foot, like you're coming in to kick the ball or something like that.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Where to now? Actually, before we do talk about the future, let's talk a little bit recently in the past. As part of the Steve Gerrard Academy, let's talk about the last, 8-9 months, whatever. Actually, how long have you been there? Since January of this year. So it's only
Since
been,
January, yeah.
4 months? Not even that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You've gone to America to play in the Dallas Cup. Just on the weekend just gone by, your team took out the under-23 national title as well. Mate, it seems like so much has happened in that short amount of time. What have been some? Let's putting America aside and the title obviously aside, the season so far. What have been some of the highs and what have been some of the lows?
There haven't been many lows, if I'm going to be honest. Ever since I hit the ground here, I think maybe a couple of weeks to get rid of jet lag and get used to the air and pitches. I think after that, it was just smooth sailing, getting into the higher up teams, if you call it, to train and then play in. Within 3 weeks, I think I was playing for the 21s. And then,
so you were initially with the 19s, were you?
Yeah, on Wednesdays they have academy matches, and that's for an under 19s age group.
Yep.
And then so I played a few of those until there was a 21s game available.
Yep.
Then I was called up to that, and ever since that one game, I've always been in the team.
Wow, so you've become basically part of the under 21s there. Yep.
Yeah, whether it's starting or being on the bench, making an impact, always part of the team. So I've made my mark.
We're talking with ex-North Geelong Warriors junior Benjamin Zilic, Benji, who is now finding himself in Liverpool in England, playing with the Steve Gerrard Academy there. Mate, take us through a typical week there. All right, it's Monday today. I think there's a holiday or something like that in England at the moment. Is it maybe the coronation holiday? I don't know what holiday it is over there. But what would be a typical Monday for you?
So Monday would start off, go to college for 2 hours and a bit, So that's doing a BTEC sports course. So after my year here, I'll have an overseas sports diploma. So you do 2 hours a day every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Then after you do that college, there's training from 2 to 3:30
Yep.
on Monday, Tuesday. Then Tuesday night at 6:30 till 8. There's a night training session with all the international players. Then Wednesday you play the academy matches with mostly local Scouse Liverpool kids
Yep.
and a set team. So I play 18s for that, which is in one of the highest leagues I think it can be in at the moment.
Yep.
Then you just have that on Wednesday. Thursday you go to do gym work and recovery after the match, as well as nighttime training again with international players.
So
And
you're
then
17. So you're 17 now. You go to the gym. They basically got you on pretty much just normal strength programs, or do they have to modify it? Do they take into account you're still a teenager? Do you work with like a strength and conditioning coach? Does he give you personalized programs? So many questions, but sort of explain to us that how can someone here in Geelong, for example, do something what you're doing, but maybe over here?
at the moment we don't have a set strength and conditioning coach. I think there'll be one coming after the mid-year break.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like whatever you see on the internet, try apply it in the gym.
Yeah.
We normally go in about groups of 3 or 4 into the gym, work together, do the same exercises, try to do the same weights so we're all getting the same value. If stronger, you can do whatever weights you want, but
Yeah.
at the moment, we don't have anything planned, anything set.
Is it hard? Is a bunch of blokes turning around and sort of sitting? I just imagine this bunch of teenagers just sitting in the gym and they're all egging each other on who can do the highest leg presses. Come on, you can do 500 kilos. You can do 400. Come on. Is it like that, or is it you have to or is there someone supervising and making sure you're not mucking around
Nah,
too much?
I think we're all quite mature, so
Yeah.
we don't really mess around, especially the gym's a public gym
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a very good facility, so we don't want to ruin our connection with that.
We've got some of your old buddies from down North Geelong way, Oscar Chorsic, Marko Juric. They're active on the comments section, asking some funny questions. But, boys, we want some serious questions. But I'll leave that up to me then, I suppose. All right, so we've now talked about Thursday being a kind of a gym day. What happens then on Friday and then the weekend?
Friday is normally just one session after the college from about 2 till 3:30 again. But recently we've changed that to do it international players versus the staff.
Yep.
Just for like a little bit of a kick around, get the staff on their feet, get them moving. And also, since all the staff were old, like semi-pro or professional in England, it gives us a good, it tells us how they played and how good they were.
Yeah. And then the weekend, obviously, reserved for games. So in a nutshell, pretty much every day you've got some form of structured football, structured soccer session. But in addition to that, you've got time to do your own practice and work on your own drills and things like that as well. You must be loving it.
Yeah, I think so far it's been like my best year.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's great to hear. Mate, unfortunately, we're going to have to really wind it up because it's already on the half-hour mark and we've still got a lot to get through. But we may have to get you back on the show again sometime down the track and maybe even do so with Ray Wood on the line as well at the same time, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But is there anything you'd love to say to all your friends and family, fellow footballers and ex-competitors in Geelong?
Just keep doing what you're doing, boys, especially boys from North Geelong like Marko and Oscar who are on the live at the moment. I know what you boys are capable of, and if you had the opportunity, I know you'd be here with me as well.
Good on you, mate. Thank you very much for joining us all the way from the UK, Benji Zilic. Wishing you, mate, all the very, very best for the next few months and certainly the next few years. And we really look forward to, like I said, catching up maybe in a few months' time to seeing how you're progressing and what the next chapter in the Benji Zilic story is all about.
Thank you, Tunch.
Good on you. Take care.
See ya.
Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves, and it is now time for the local game segment as well. As we had recently just the global game, and in our global game segment this week, we spoke to Benji Zilic all the way in the UK. Well, we've got a lot to get through, so let's get started, and we'll start at the top in NPL Victoria competition. It was rather unforgettable weekend, if you like, for North Geelong, up against Oakley Cannons, who were just absolutely at their marauding best. A 5-0 win over the Warriors. Big result for Oakley Cannons. That pushes them, closer and closer up towards the top two there. South Melbourne defeated Avondale FC, so that makes it even more interesting there at the top. But at the other end of the competition standings, North Geelong at the moment definitely in struggle town. They've got a big game and a tough game coming up this week when they take on South Melbourne at Lakeside Stadium on Sunday. It's going to be a tough ask, but the following week they're at home to Bentley Green. So two very important weeks coming up. Very quickly over to we're going to jump over to NPL 3. Well, that's the State League 1 standings. NPL 3, Geelong held Boroondara Carey Eagles to a 0-0 draw at Stead Park on Saturday night. And while we're with the NPL teams, tomorrow we've got some midweek football action happening both at Stead Park and at Elko Park. Firstly, at Stead Park, Geelong taking on Hampton East Brighton, a State League 2 side, in round 5 of the Australia Cup. So that's a big game for Geelong. They've done really, really well in recent weeks, in recent rounds of the Australia Cup. They're at home. They're taking on State League 2 opposition, and certainly my money's on Geelong to progress through to the next round. North Geelong, likewise, at 8 p.m. tomorrow at Elko Park, host Chisholm United. Now, Chisholm United are a State League 3 side, so on paper, you'd say, yep, should be a pretty easy result. However, Chisholm United are Oakley Cannons' sister club, or affiliate, if you like. They are stacked with a lot of Oakley Cannons youngsters who just haven't made the NPL grade. So that is going to be a big game for both our NPL teams from Geelong. Now, we're moving along then to the State League competitions in Men's State League 1, and we'll talk a little bit more about this one in particular. Corio, they came up against Whittlesea Rangers. I was about to say Whittlesea United. There are two Whittleseas in State League 1. They came up against Whittlesea Rangers, a 4-0 thumping there of Whittlesea. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about this game later on when we speak to Ante Didlitzer, the Corio coach. So that's going to be just very, very shortly. Geelong Rangers, they had a draw on the weekend against Westphale Olympic. So they're slowly moving up the competition standings, but it's a very, very close competition this as far as the fight for a relegation. Altona North and Epping City currently occupy those spots, but they're only 2 points behind Geelong Rangers. So, look, it's quite tight and very, very congested there at the moment. We've got, moving along to State 4, Bell Park and Barwon. Well, that was a high-scoring draw there on the weekend, 3-3. For Bell Park, we had Gabriel May, Joseph Prpic and Jeremy Jurcic scoring, whereas for Barwon, Johnny Luong scored 1 and Andy Thomas, the captain, scored 2. Surf Coast went down to Moonee Valley Knights, 3-1. And then in State 5, Deakin Ducks had their colours lowered by Bendigo City 3-2. And then Surfside Waves, a big result here, 6-1 win over Tane United. Noah Muhika scoring 4 goals. The youngster really helping his side to their first win of the season. We also then had, in the women's competition over on the following day, we had some big results there for some of the Geelong teams as well. We saw Ringwood United, who were at the time one of the top teams in the VPLW competition. They've ended up taking a bit of they've dropped about 3 spots now. They were defeated by Geelong Galaxy 4-2. Shian Rosselli scored 2 goals in the 13th and the 15th minute. Aya Saino scored in the 59th minute, her 8th goal. But on debut, Sumitoku Aya, the new recruit from Japan, she scored in the 42nd minute. So only Geelong Galaxy's 3rd win of the season, but they managed to get to a they're now into a mid-table position. So a good result for them on that occasion. Now we've got some footage there of the Larry United North Geelong State League 1 Women's Derby that was played yesterday at Lara Recreation Reserve. It was the first time that these two have met at this level of competition. It was headed for a 0-0 draw, very, very even contest until Monica D'Alessandro popped up in the 91st minute to score Lara's only goal, and that was a 1-0 final result for Lara United. So they maintained their unbeaten start to the season. The other game in State League 1 Women's Division 1 involving a Geelong side, Geelong Rangers took on Mill Park, and Sophie Amota scored in the 32nd minute. That was actually an equaliser by that stage, but it wasn't enough to give Geelong Rangers the points, and they returned with a 2-1 loss in the end. There's some more highlights happening now. Good crowd, by the way. It was bitterly cold on a Sunday afternoon, but you can see there in the background quite a good-sized crowd on a Sunday afternoon, which was really good to see. Towards the end there was a cross there by Louisa Cook for North Geelong, who were missing Lara Herrich. And here's the goal for Lara United. A bit of a goalmouth scramble in the 91st minute, and bang, hits the back of the net. 3 points to Lara United, and North Geelong suffer their first loss of the season. And here we go. We've got the ladder. There we go. The ladder's come up. Lara United jumped to 2nd spot on the competition standings. Bundoora United obviously are the team to beat in Women's State League 1. North Geelong drops down to 4th position with 6 points, and Geelong Rangers at the moment in 9th position. This weekend, Brunswick Zebras are hosting North Geelong. Lara United are at home to Mill Park, and Geelong Rangers will be at home to Keilor Park. So things are still early days yet. Geelong Galaxy are at home to the Casey Comets. They are at home to the Casey Comets. Now, we're going to take a very, very short break. When we do return, we'll be talking State League 1 men's football with the coach of the Karaya Soccer Club, Ante Didolica, and they had a massive win on the weekend. We're going to hear all about it from Ante and all the latest that's happening down at Hume Reserve. Don't go away, folks. Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves podcast, powered by the Geelong Region Soccer Show. And it's my absolute pleasure to bring to the microphone now the coach of the Corio Soccer Club in Men's State League 1, Ante Dittelitsa. Ante, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Tonchi. Thanks very much. And what a great young man you just had on the show. He's and good luck, Benji. I hope it all goes well for him.
I'll tell you what, he's only 17, but he's definitely providing a lot of inspiration for a lot of youngsters here in Geelong as well. And mate, let's before we talk about Corio, let's talk about we touched on with Benji how hard it is to have your father as a coach, and you're a coach. And your son's doing quite well as well. He's part of the elite program. And dare I say, there's a lot of those here in Geelong where coaches get involved with their sons and their sons become part of the elite program. How hard is it to sort of separate that father-coach role, home when things aren't going so well? When things are going well, it's easy. But when things aren't going so well, what do you do?
Look, you know what? It's one of those difficult tasks. I've always said, like Anthony and myself, I've coached him pretty much up until now. He just sort of got picked up this year at Melbourne City for the City Academy, the 16s. So it's now it's time for him to shine. It's really comes down to him and being able to deliver. But I think throughout those times, I think all of our fathers coached us once upon a time throughout our football journeys. So I think it just happens, and then eventually it comes out where you just sort of let it slide and they move on to bigger and better. You hope.
Yeah, that's right. Let's move on to Corio, mate. What a game on the weekend. And it's been building. It's been brewing very, very much, as you were talking about this off air. Take us through the game, and we can straight away see Vedran Stojanovic. Look at that goal. And this was after, 36 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, it was the first first minute, under a minute. But you know what? It was brewing. We were close. Sort of in the last 3 or 4 games, we've been really close. And I did say to the assistant, I said there was going to be a team that was going to be on the receiving end. It just happened to be Whittlesea, and so quickly. So I think it's a part that we're sort of gathering momentum. Training is really high intensity, and so we really showed it on Saturday.
I think the commentator there was calling Vedran the big man. It was just I don't know if he could pronounce it well, but mate, he's one of the most enigmatic and one of the most entertaining players here in Geelong. When he fires, he absolutely fires. It just seemed like on Saturday, Vedran Stojanovic just absolutely fired up.
Yeah, he can't stop him. He's unstoppable. When he's fired up, he's unstoppable. There's no one that can. Like I said, I've coached for many years, many years. He's the one player that I say to myself, wow, lucky he's on our team rather than against us.
It had to come. The first win had to come. Now the bubble is burst, so to speak. Is this a season? Was that a season-defining moment as far as that? As far as the battle for survival at the moment, because speaking to Mario Gregorio, even pre-season, he was really confident this team would do a lot better than the ladder suggests at the moment. And if we have a look at the ladder there, you've just jumped off the bottom of the competition standings to 10th spot.
Yeah, and you know what? It has. I think like Saturday's game is the start of something new. The boys rallied up really good pride to the game, and I do believe that this is something now that was going to sort of a little bit of a benchmark for our team in moving forwards and moving up this ladder, because we shouldn't be where we are, that's for sure.
Yeah. Big game this week coming up against Yarraville. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the debut of a young fella on the weekend who scored his first goal on debut, Dylan Lee. Now, this young chap is highly regarded, and he's come up through the ranks, I think, at North Geelong and Caroline Springs George Cross, the junior NPL. Yeah, let's tell us a bit more about him. He's aware of you boys, is that right?
Yep. He came from Georges. I think Eric and Craig Craig prior to it knew about him because he coached him in the 21s at Georges last year. And then obviously Eric sort of sent him our way when Bob was still in charge. And we're ready. Look, when I sort of took over, we were sort of in a transition sort of phase. I wasn't sort of totally convinced by our visa players that we had. So I sort of said to Dylan, I said, this is the situation. I'm a young coach who uses young players. I said, you're going to get the best opportunity here. And he's been training hard. He's had a couple of games in the 21s and sat on the bench and played a sort of cameo in the last game. But he was ready. And Thursday night training of last week, which is the most important session for me to pick the team, he was ready. And I knew that he was ready. And, what happened with 2 assists and a goal, I knew that was, look, I didn't know, but I had a good gut feeling to tell me that this was going to happen.
Yeah. What about, he's one of the new brigade, if you like, but what about some of the old guard that have been there for forever and a day? Darcy Rapper, captain, he's come back from injury, which is great to see. Billy Argyros, Callum Ferguson, Jackson Davis. How some of those players, have you noticed them really, really step up now as well this year?
Yeah, you know what? They've matured. I've had them all back with me in under 16s and under 18s and under 21s at North and now at senior. So they've all been under my regime. Justin Hands, you forgot about, and they've all matured. It's probably a perfect time to actually get the lads because you can see the maturity and the decision making, and you can actually see that they've got hunger in their belly.
Yeah. Speaking of changes since in the last few years, the last time you were at Corio, man, the club rooms, the change rooms were quite dingy. They were renowned as being the worst in Geelong. Nothing had been done in 30, 40 years. You come back and it's like a different world. But not only that, mate, like apart from the first class facilities that have greeted you, that must now have changed. The atmosphere, the mood must be a completely different. So it must be like a completely different club.
Yeah, it is. It is like the feel around the club. It actually feels like a club, and I don't mean to say that derogatory when prior to to the 19 regime.
Yeah.
When it was just myself, Zolly, and Mario. Now you've got the Cockers of the world who came in towards the end of sort of when I was sort of on my way out. The whole new committee, Salami doing magnificent things with the juniors.
Slavko Pantelic, for those that don't know him. Everyone knows him by Salami. I think no one knows him by his real name.
And then Zolly, Mario, the president. Like, it's just remarkable. It is honestly the feel when they have a Thursday night dinner, it's packed. A Wednesday night dinner, it feels like a club, but not, and I know that seems sort of like different to say, but it does. It actually feels, you can feel the sensation in the air around the club as well.
Yeah. And Mario Gregorio, the president, and his trusty band of henchmen there have got a lot to a lot of people have been a lot to be thankful for, because he has worked on this for several years, quite a few years, and it wasn't something that was going to happen overnight. But we mentioned Salami, Slavko Pantelic, and he heads a junior subcommittee that has just in the last 4 years or so gone from 0 to 200 plus junior participants. And I was out there earlier tonight, and it's just a hive of activity, this being a Monday night. There's just kids and parents and cars and everything everywhere. But that must also add to the whole, as you say, the whole feel about the club. It's not just the senior men's that are doing well, playing at a high division, but all parts of the club are really thriving at the moment.
Yeah, and you've got the Galaxy girls there playing their football. So it's remarkable. I've never seen it there since, I was there for 3 years, sort of 4 odd years ago. And now you can just feel the change. It's magnificent. It's actually quite good. It's pleasant.
Yeah. Now, let's get back to the senior men's team. This weekend coming, a big game against Yarraville. Now, last night we had the Yarraville coach on the Football Out West show. So if anyone hasn't been able to tune into that, go over to the Football Out West show YouTube channel, our sister podcast program, and you'll be able to hear that. They've got a really good connection happening, obviously, with South Melbourne being a Greek-backed club. And they've got a major facelift plan for the club. When they've got that sort of power behind them, it certainly makes them quite formidable, quite strong. But Corio, one of Corio's mantras, I guess, this year or even since coming into State One has been a David and Goliath approach. We don't care who we're up against, we're going to stand up and fight. Is that your own coaching style? Is that something that you really try and instill, that no matter who you come up against on the day, you're really going to go hard at them?
Yeah, we don't mind who we play. We were 10 men with Sydenham, who have a budget that's probably triple ours, and we went at them, and we don't care who it is. We know in this competition that if we're on and the team's on, that we're going to be hard to beat, and that's all I want, is the challenge. Each week, I let the boys know that each week is a challenge, and we need to step up. There's no half-hearted. We need each week consistency. The training regime that I'm on I'm all about fit and fitness. It's something that we're working towards. We're not fully there yet, but we showed a little bit of a sign on Saturday of how good we can be when we're running it, with all guns blazing.
Yeah, Nante, since you were last coach at Corio, you've gone to St Albans Saints in Melbourne, St Albans Dynamo, and you're coaching a junior NPL setup there as well. Obviously, with your own son now being part of the Melbourne City establishment as well, you've been exposed to coaching styles and coaching at high levels, at elite levels, as far as the junior side of things is concerned. Has that now fashioned you? Has that sort of shaped your coaching, your own coaching, and how has that changed you as a coach now 4 years later?
Yeah, the quickest way to say this, it's quietened me down a little bit, especially towards referees. Because I now understand that the importance of sending messages. You can send messages in different manners, and I think I've learned that, and I think that's probably the one area of my coaching that needed to be worked upon. So I think now, lucky for the referees that, I've sort of now changed the way I sort of do things, which is good, because actually at junior level, you can't be that type of, coach. So that was important, and I probably didn't even see it as it happens. But now you sort of you sort of do change your way slightly. Yeah. Well, I've changed my way a lot, not slightly. I must say. I've moved the goalposts, put it that way.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's great to hear if you're a referee in the Geelong region. And look, the refs, and you see it, at all levels, they do cop a lot, and it is unfortunate. It really needs to be reined in, and as you say, setting that example as well. It's hard. Sometimes you get so carried away by passion and there's so much build-up of tension. That's what we love about our game. But, exactly. You have to take a step back. Yarraville, what do we know about Yarraville? I mean, they're in fifth position. They defeated Whittlesea United. So they actually leapfrogged Whittlesea United as a result of their win. So prior to that, they were I think they were 7th or 8th or something like that. But they're travelling not too bad. They're only, 4 points behind the second place team, or 3 points behind the second place team. So it's a close division, close competition. Where can you overcome Yarraville on Saturday?
Look, they're very structured. I accidentally went to watch them against upfield because I wasn't actually the coach of Corio at that time.
Yeah.
So I thought, what's local? What can I go and watch? It's usually Altona City or someone else. So I went to watch them, and it happened to be Yarraville versus Upfield. So I thought, how good's this? Yeah. So then I've got a picture in my head of what we're sort of going to do, but we ain't going to change too much on the way we sort of beat Whittlesea Rangers, because I do find that Yarraville and Whittlesea both were structured very similar. Mm-hmm. One thing is that I look at in advantage is they've actually got a game on tomorrow night, I think.
Yes, Australian Cup, they do indeed.
So which I think, coming into Sunday, depending on what it's like, it could suit us. But look, I think it's going to be a tight contest. I don't think any team really is going to beat anyone with any more than what we sort of beat Whittlesea, I suppose. And on the day, I think if we're not structured correctly, that could happen to us.
Well, they're predicting, I think, around about 16 degrees and fairly clear. So it's going to be a little bit on the chilly side. But yeah, we love it like this. Winter football. You rug up. You
The winter sport.
Winter sport, absolutely. And there's a beautiful new kitchen there at Hume Reserve with lots and lots of warm food to keep everyone happy. So that game kicks off at 3 p.m.
Yep.
Sorry, you were going to say?
I was going to say it's the chicken rolls down there that make my
the
day
chicken
right.
rolls.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, that's and the coach recommends that. I could not have a Corio Soccer Club segment on this show without mentioning Santino Mamone. He's the legend. He's a big fan of this show. He's one of the number one fans. Kickoff Saturday, 3 p.m. Get around the Corio boys, says Santino. And that's all roads lead. He's still going nuts, aren't they? Veshko says a few things there as well. Yep, so big game this Saturday, State League 1 football. There's a lot of games at home this weekend. A lot of Geelong teams are playing at home. So get around with those games. But Geelong this weekend is going to be the epicenter of football. Will be the actual heartbeat of football in Geelong, and that is Bell Park, and that is Hume Reserve. So get yourself down there at 3 p.m. for a big game between Corio and Yarraville. Ante, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, and it's great to have you back in the city and coaching. That's where you belong, and wish Corio and wish you all the very best for the season ahead.
Thank you very much, Tonchi. Good night.
Good on you. Ante Didlitsa, the coach of the Corio Soccer Club. Big game happening there. We'll go through some of the games coming up this weekend. As we mentioned, in the NPL, North Geelong are away to South Melbourne. Geelong also on Sunday taking on Melbourne Victory at Epping Stadium. Definitely the North Geelong game will be live streamed. I'm not too sure about the Geelong and Melbourne Victory game though. On Saturday, Corio hosting Yarraville at 3 p.m. Geelong Rangers hosting the Albion Rovers. Surf Coast at home to Truganina. Bell Park at home to Laverton, whilst Barwon travel to Barnstoneworth in State 4. In State 5, Wyndham host Lara United. Surfside Waves are away to Melton Phoenix at 5 p.m. and then Deakin have the bye. Now, we mentioned already on Sunday, Brunswick Zebras are at home to North Geelong in Women's State League 1. Lara United are at home to Mill Park, and Geelong Rangers are at home to Keilor Park, whereas in Victorian Premier League women's competition, Geelong Galaxy host Casey Comets there at Hume Reserve 3 p.m. on Sunday. Before we go, folks, let's quickly take a look at the ladders of the local competitions. We'll take a look at the men's Division 1 firstly, and then the women's competition there. So after 3 games, we've got Bell Park on top, and they're starting to pull away a little there with 3 wins from 3 games. Barwon Whites are in second spot. Then we've got Surf Coast, Armstrong United making up the top 4, followed by Breakwater Eagles, Barwon Blue, FC Leopold, Barwon Heads, and Geelong Rangers at the foot of the competition standings. And if you can see that with the 15 teams all on the one screen, this is the women's division at the moment. Deakin Ducks up the top there, followed by Drysdale, Surfside Waves, and Bell Park making up the top 4. Lots of football happening all around the region at the moment. And that brings us to the very end of our show. Thank you once again for being a part of tonight's program. Thank you to all of those North Geelong fans, to all those Corio fans, and especially to all of the neutrals as well coming on the show tonight. We'd like to have your company every week, not just on those occasions when your team is being featured or someone from your club is being featured. Big shout out once again to our major sponsor this year, Euro Football Star. If it wasn't for them, we certainly wouldn't be able to bring you this program. Next week, we've got a few more big guests, which we'll be announcing later on this week or maybe early next week. But in the meantime, good night, and thank you very much once again for being a part of the Game of Two Halves podcast. Good night.